A significant amount of the amateur screenplays that I read have point of view problems. Make the whole screenplay go. I'm going to demonstrate what I mean by that by taking the entire movie, The Wizard of Oz, and ruining it. We'll talk about what causes the problem.
Get up and teach him a lesson.
And what you can do to avoid your whole screenplay going.
Oh dear.
What do I mean by point of view? That is what character we're following, the experience we're getting. You want to, as much as possible, keep the audience in the shoes of your lead character to feel their experience. Now, if you have an ensemble and you have a lot of different characters, that's a different thing. But if you want to have a strong lead character, you want your audience to experience the same thing they are experiencing. The Wizard of Oz is very strongly Dorothy's point of view. What happens in scripts that have point of view problems? I see 3 issues. One is just point of view ADD. It is all over the place.
Are you doing that on purpose? Or can't you make up your mind?
And I think this happens because screenwriters are so enamored with their plot and not thinking about the experience of the character or the experience of the audience. The second problem I see, I call midpoint explosion. That's where the screenwriter is following the lead very tightly up until about the midpoint, and then it goes crazy and they're following this character and that one and the other one. I think that happens when there just isn't enough plot. There's not enough for the lead character to do.
Yes, I guess you're right.
And then the one we're really going to look at, I call clunky beginning.
You're not starting out very well.
The screenwriter follows many different characters. We go jumpity, jumpity, jump all over the place.
Oh, this is terrible.
And then in the midpoint, or right around there, when all these characters meet the lead, then we kind of have a solid singular story happening after that. So let me show you what that looks like. This is how an amateur screenwriter could mess up point of view in The Wizard of Oz. First we meet Dorothy and we find out she's having problems with her neighbor being mean to Toto.
Did she hurt you? She tried to, didn't she? Come on, we'll go tell Uncle Henry and Auntie Em.
She goes to tell her aunt and uncle, but they don't pay any attention. She doesn't feel like anyone cares.
Dorothy, please, we're trying to count.
Oh, but Aunt Em, she hit him.
Don't bother us now, honey.
Now you just help us out today and find yourself a place where you won't get into any trouble.
Some place where there isn't any trouble. Do you suppose there is such a place, Toto?
Then we visit the lion. He and his pride are starving because they've run out of rabbits to eat. Now they need to go hunt bigger game like buffalo. But the cowardly lion doesn't want to go because he could be trampled. That's dangerous.
I haven't any courage at all. I even scare myself.
Then we meet the Tin Man. He's lonely. He goes out to dinner alone. He goes to the movies alone. He goes bowling alone. And his coworker says, dude, go on Match.com and get a girlfriend. Look, I made you a profile. Your username is a perfect 10. He says, no, I can't get a girlfriend.
No heart.
The Scarecrow works at Old McDonald's farm-to-table fresh fast casual. He's a janitor, but he doesn't use a mop. He just falls all over the floor to clean it. His wife says, you don't make enough money. You need to get a better job. He says, I can't.
I haven't got a brain. Only straw.
Then we go back to Dorothy and find out the mean neighbor has a court order to take Toto away.
That dog's a menace to the community. I'm taking him to the sheriff and make sure he's destroyed.
But then when Toto escapes, Dorothy decides they need to run away from home.
We've got to get away. We've got to run away.
The lion gets kicked out of his pride because he won't help hunt. The Tin Man decides his life is not worth living, and he goes out into a field during a rainstorm to rust himself to death. The Scarecrow comes home to find his wife has left him. He gets so depressed he loses his job and his house and has to sleep in a field. Then Dorothy gets caught up in the tornado and winds up in Oz.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
She meets Glenda, gets the red slippers, and finds that she needs to follow the yellow brick road to visit the Wizard of Oz and figure out how to get back home.
You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
On the way, she meets the lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. We then have the rest of the movie play out in the same way as the original.
Oh, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
always had the power to go back to Kansas.
But after Dorothy gets home,
There's no place like home.
we visit the Tin Man to see that he now has a girlfriend. We visit the Lion and see that he's now his pride's best hunter. We visit the Scarecrow and he's now the manager of a Starbucks and taking advantage of their educational programs and going to Oz Community College. Did you see how it was all jumpity, 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 jump?
My, people come and go so quickly here.
We can't really settle into any character's story.
Why, no.
We're feeling what the Lion feels, and then we're feeling what the Scarecrow, and then Dorothy, instead of getting a singular character throughout the whole story that we can feel their story. The other problem that happens here with so much jumping around is the story lacks cause and effect. We don't have this scene causes this scene, causes this scene, causes this scene. We have, and then over here, and then over here, and then over there, and the story doesn't flow.
How did you ever get like this?
I think the reason this happens is screenwriters know that you have to set up your story, right? And every time they have significant characters, I think they believe, okay, I need to set these characters up, and they think, oh, setup is in the beginning of the script. So in the beginning, I have to set up all these characters, but they're sacrificing point of view. And the thing is, you do not have to necessarily set up your characters in the very beginning. You can stick to your lead and then bring in characters as the lead meets those characters.
These things must be done delicately.
And you're saying, oh, well, I have got really important backstory that I've got to get in there. Backstory doesn't necessarily have to come in the setup.
I guess you're right.
So you can put it a little later, and you don't necessarily always have to show. There's so much emphasis, show, don't tell, show, don't tell. But sometimes that goes a little crazy and you end up sacrificing point of view. Sometimes it's okay for a character to tell their story if it saves your point of view issue.
About a year ago, I was chopping that tree, and suddenly it began to rain. And right in the middle of a chop, I rusted solid. I've been that way ever since.
Now, what I'm not saying is you absolutely positively always have to stick to your lead character and can never leave them. But always remember cause and effect. Whatever you're shelling out to show needs to directly relate to the lead character's experience. In The Wizard of Oz, the point of view does split a little bit when Dorothy is captured by the Wicked Witch.
Those slippers will never come off as long as you're alive. That's how much longer you've got to be alive.
We follow Dorothy separately from her friends, but this is done very briefly. And again, her friends coming to save her directly affects Dorothy's story. In Star Wars, we did shell out to Princess Leia recording the message. But that was because that was going to directly relate to something Luke was going to get.
Were you on a Star Cruiser?
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
The movie The Silence of the Lambs is very strongly Clarice Starling's point of view, but every once in a while we will shell out to Hannibal Lecter or Buffalo Bill's victim or Buffalo Bill because it directly affects what is going to happen to Clarice. But you want to make sure when you're doing this, keep cause and effect. This causes this, causes this, causes this. And do it very, very briefly, but as much as possible,
Just try.
to keep your audience in the shoes of your lead character.
Keep tight inside of them. Their magic must be very powerful.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow, 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 follow the yellow brick road.
I hope you enjoyed this video.
We thank you very sweetly.
And I need your support to make more.
You're the best friends anybody ever had.
These are very labor intensive. So I now have a Patreon page. You can support the channel and help me make more videos.
Why, of course I will.
Hooray!
But as always, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will talk to you later.